Most people will scroll away before hearing the one sentence that could change their perspective on love. Don't be one of them. Listen carefully, stay to the end, and see if this message speaks directly to your heart.
The moment I saw your photo, my life was never the same. And I don't say that in the dramatic way people usually do. There was no music swelling in the background, no instant certainty, no voice in my head saying, "That's the one." It was quieter than that, almost ordinary. Which is why it took me a moment to understand what had actually shifted. I remember where I was, not because the place was special, but because everything else about that moment felt completely normal. Just another pause in the day, another glance at a screen, another second that was supposed to pass without meaning anything at all. But it didn't. I didn't feel excitement first. I felt stillness. The kind that makes you stop scrolling without realizing why. The kind that slows you breathing before your mind catches up. I stared longer than I meant to. Not because you were trying to impress anyone in that photo. You were posing for attention. You were performing happiness. You were just there. And somehow, that was what reached me. I've seen countless faces in my life. Faces that fit the idea of beauty perfectly. Faces that demanded to be noticed. Faces that were designed to leave an impression. I thought I knew what it felt like to be drawn to someone visually. I thought I understood attraction, but this wasn't that. This felt like recognition without context. Like my body understood something my mind hadn't processed yet. There was no rush of thoughts, no story forming immediately. Just a quiet sense of familiarity that made no logical sense at all. I remember thinking, why does this feel different? Your eyes weren't asking for anything. They weren't trying to pull me in. They weren't saying, look at me. They were just present. And presence has a weight to it. A gravity you don't notice until it pulls you off balance. I didn't smile. I didn't react outwardly. But something inside me leaned forward. I tried to rationalize it. Told myself it was coincidence. Told myself I was projecting meaning onto something simple. I've always been good at explaining things away. It's safer that way. You don't have to feel anything deeply if you can label it quickly. But this resisted labels. I looked again, searching for what exactly had caught me. Was it the softness? The calm? The way nothing in the photo felt forced? I couldn't pinpoint it, and that bothered me more than it should have been. Because I'm used to understanding my reactions. I've lived long enough to know when something is temporary, when it was just curiosity, when it's a passing interest that fades as soon as something else takes its place. This didn't fade. It didn't intensify either. It stayed. Quiet. Steady. Unmoving, like it was waiting. That's when the NE started. Not fear awareness. The kind that whispers, pay attention. This matters more than you think. I didn't know you. I didn't know your voice, your story, you past. I didn't know what you'd been through or what you were carrying. And yet something about that single image felt heavier than it should have. It wasn't attraction in the way I'd known it before. It was connection without access. Like standing outside a room you've never entered and somehow missing it anyway. I noticed how my thoughts shifted after that. Not immediately toward you, but inward. I became quieter, more reflective. I started questioning things I hadn't questioned in a long time. The way I'd been living, the way I'd been choosing, the way I'd convinced myself I didn't need certain things anymore. It's strange how one moment can expose the stories you tell yourself. To stay comfortable, I had told myself I was content, that I was past wanting something real, that I was focused on other things now. Goals, stability, direction. I believed that, or at least I thought I did. But after seeing your photo, that certainty cracked, not dramatically, not painfully, just enough to let something through. I didn't imagine a future. I didn't fantasize. I didn't build a version of you in my head. What lingered wasn't an image of us. It was a feeling I couldn't name. A sense that something in me had been touched lightly, almost accidentally. And most unsettling part, it didn't feel new. It felt remembered. I caught myself wondering not who you were, but how you were. Whether you were tired, whether you carried your strength quietly, whether you had learned, like I had, to keep parts of yourself hidden. Because the world doesn't always know how to handle softness. Those weren't logical questions to ask about a photo, but they came anyway. That's when I realized this wasn't about appearance, it was about energy. About the way some people carry themselves in a way that feels honest, even through a screen. I've learned that the things that change us most, rarely announce themselves. They slip in unnoticed, rearrange something inside us, and leave us wondering why we can't return to how we were before. That's what happened here. I didn't fall in love in that moment. I didn't decide anything. But I was no longer the same person who had looked away from the screen seconds earlier. Something had shifted in my awareness. Something had softened. I went back to my day, but I wasn't fully there. Not distracted, just altered, like a note had been added to the background of my life, subtle but persistent. I didn't chase the feeling. I let it sit, because whatever it was, it didn't want to be chased. It wanted to be noticed. And I noticed how rarely that happens anymore. We rush past so much. We label, categorize, consume, move on. We don't let moments linger long enough to change us, but this one stayed. Not because I held on to it, but because it held on to it. But because it held on to me. I don't know what this means yet. I don't know what it becomes. I only know that something real doesn't need explanation right away. It reveals itself slowly in layers over time. And the truth is, the moment I saw your photo, my life wasn't changed because of who you are. It was changed because of what it reminded me of. That I'm so capable of feeling something quiet and true. That I haven't closed myself off as much as I thought. That somewhere inside me, there's still space for recognition, not just reaction. That moment didn't give me answers. It gave me awareness. And awareness, once it arrives, doesn't leave you the same. Stay with me. This story doesn't end here. After that moment, life didn't stop. That's the strange part. Nothing around me changed in a way anyone else could see. The day continued. Messages came in. Responsibilities waited. Conversations happened. On the surface, everything moved the way it always had. But underneath, something had shifted its position. Like a quiet current redirecting the flow of water without disturbing the surface. I didn't think about you constantly. That would have been easier to explain. Instead, you appeared in the spaces between things. In the pauses. In the moments where my mind usually wandered without direction. I'd be doing something ordinary, standing in mine, washing my hands, staring out of a window, and suddenly that same stillness would return. The same subtle tightening in my chest. The same feeling of being gently interrupted. It wasn't obsession, it was awareness. I started paying closer attention to myself, to how rarely anything slowed me down anymore, to how often I moved from one thing to the next without actually being present for any of it. That single moment had reminded me of what it feels like to stop without forcing yourself to pause, not because you're tired, but because something inside you asked you to. I didn't realize how long it had been since that happened. I caught myself wondering why that photo stayed with me when so many others had faded instantly. It didn't make sense in the way I was used to things making sense. There was no checklist you matched, no obvious reason I could point to. And maybe that was the point. The most meaningful things don't arrive with explanations. They arrive with resonance. Resonance doesn't shout, it hums. I also noticed how my internal dialogue changed. I became less interested in surface-level distractions. Things that usually filled time suddenly felt loud and hollow. Not bad, just insufficient. I didn't judge them. I simply felt less attached. It was like something in me had been reminded of PTH. I didn't imagine who you were. I didn't project fantasies onto you. I didn't turn you into a story. If anything, I resisted that instinct. I didn't want to turn a quiet truth into noise. I wanted to respect whatever this was enough to let it breathe. So, I let it sit, and as it sat, it began to show me things about myself I hadn't been willing to see before. How much I'd trained myself not to feel too deeply. How often I would told myself that wanting connection was naive or unnecessary. How easily I learned to replace meaning with momentum. I had convinced myself that being busy was the same as being fulfilled. That illusion cracked gently. I realized that the reason your photo stayed with me wasn't because it promised something new. It reminded me of something old, something I'd known once and quietly set aside. The part of me that recognizes energy before logic, the part that knows when something matters without needing proof. That part had been quiet for a long time. I began to think about timing, about how moments find us when we're finally quiet enough to receive them. Not when we're ready in the way we think we need to be, but when we're open in ways we didn't plan. I wondered what would have happened if I'd seen that photo years ago. Would it have landed the same way? I don't think so. I think I would have rushed past it, explained it away, or tried to turn it into something it wasn't. Now I didn't need to do that. I also noticed how I became more honest with myself in other areas. I stopped saying yes automatically. I stopped feeling silence just to avoid it. I allowed myself to feel uncertainty without trying to resolve it immediately. That's when I understood something important. That moment didn't awaken desire. It awakened discernment. It reminded me that not everything meaningful arrives loudly. Some things enter your life softly to see if you're paying attention. To see if you're slowed down enough to notice what doesn't beg to be noticed. He didn't know you were doing this. You didn't choose this role. And that made it even more real because it wasn't intentional. It wasn't curated. It wasn't aimed at me. It just was. And that authenticity carries weight. I began to see how rare it is to encounter something unforced in a world that constantly tries to perform. How exhausting it is to sift through noise looking for something or hat feels true. How easily we mistake stimulation for connection. This wasn't stimulating. It was grounding. I also realized that whatever this was, it didn't want to be rushed. It didn't ask for action. It asked for presence. It didn't pull me forward aggressively. It anchored me inward. That's a different kind of pull. I thought about how many times I'd ignored similar moments in the past. How often I dismissed subtlety because it didn't demand attention. How many quiet truths I'd walk past because it didn't fit into my plans. That thought stayed with me longer than I expected. I don't know you yet. And maybe that's what makes us honest. I'm not responding to who I think you are. I'm responding to how something in me responded to you without expectation. That feels important to acknowledge. I didn't tell anyone about this, not because it was secretive, but because it felt personal in a way that didn't need witnesses. Some things lose their clarity when they're spoken too early. I wanted to understand it before naming it, so I listened. And what I heard was an urgency. It wasn't longing. It was a quiet reminder that I'm still capable of being moved without being overwhelmed. Or, Elmed, that I can still feel something real without turning it into a demand that matters to me now more than ever. I also realized that this moment didn't give me answers about the future. It gave me insight into the present. It showed me where I am emotionally, what I'm ready for, but I'm no longer interested in settling for. It didn't promise connection. It clarified capacity. And clarity changes how you move through the world. I don't know where this goes. I don't know if it goes anywhere at all. But I know that the moment I saw your photo, something in me woke up gently and refused to go back to sleep. Not because of you alone, but because I was finally ready to notice. Stay with me. There's more beneath this than meets the eye. After that quiet awakening, something else began to happen. Something even more subtle. I stopped searching. Not consciously, not as a decision I announced to myself, but as a natural response. The part of me that used to look outward for stimulation, for distraction, for something to fill the empty spaces, it softened, it leaned back. It trusted that whatever needed to arrive would do so without being chased. That was new. I hadn't realized how, or much effort I had been putting into movement, into staying ahead of stillness, into keeping my life full enough that nothing unexpected could touch me too deeply. Seeing your photo reminded me that stillness isn't dangerous. Sometimes it's an invitation. I noticed how my days felt different after that. Not lighter exactly, but clearer. I became more selective with my attention. I didn't give it away as easily. I noticed when conversations felt hollow and when they felt grounded. I noticed when I was present and when I was just filling time. That awareness didn't come from discipline. It came from contrast. Because once you feel that quiet resonance, even once you start noticing when it's missing elsewhere, and not in a judgmental way, just in an honest one, I began reflecting on my past connections, not to analyze them or regret them, but to understand something about myself. I realized how often I'd chosen intensity over alignment, how many times I'd mistaken urgency for meaning, how easily I'd confuse being wanted with being seen. Those realizations didn't hurt. They explained things. I understood why some connections burned out quickly, why others felt heavy even when they looked good on the surface. I understood why I felt restless even when nothing was technically wrong. I'd been listening to noise instead of signal. Your photo didn't shop. It didn't demand. It didn't promise, it just existed. And because of that, it carried more truth than anything loud ever had. I started asking myself different questions. Not, what do I want? But what do I respond to when I'm not trying? Not what excites me, but what steadies me. Those questions led me inward instead of outward. They changed my pace. I stopped rushing decisions. I stopped filling silence with explanations. I allowed uncertainty to sit without treating it like a problem to solve. That was uncomfortable at first. I wasn't used to letting things unfold without control. But something about this felt safe enough to trust. I also noticed how my body reacted when I thought about you. Not in fantasy, not in longing, but in curiosity. My shoulders didn't tense. My breathing didn't speed up. There was no spike of adrenaline. Just a quiet openness, like a door unlocked. Not thrown wide open, just unlocked. That mattered to me because my body has learned things my mind used to ignore. It knows when something is off. It knows when something feels forced. And it knows when something feels honest. This felt honest. I didn't need to know more to respect that feeling. I didn't need to turn it into a plan. I didn't need to attach expectations to it. I trusted that if it was meant to grow, it would. And if it wasn't, it had already given me something valuable. It had reminded me how to feel without rushing. I think that's what changed me most. Not the image itself, but what it unlocked. A slower way of moving. A quieter way of noticing. A deeper way of choosing. I realized how rarely we allow moments to shape us without immediately trying to own them. We want outcomes. We want clarity. We want guarantees. But some moments don't come to offer those things. They come to realign you. This one did. I became more patient with myself. I didn't press myself to define what this meant. I didn't shame myself for feeling something without logic. I let myself experience it without needing permission. That felt like growth. I also became more compassionate toward others. I noticed how many people are carrying quiet things no one sees. How many people move through life performing instead, or out of being. How rare it is to encounter something or someone who feels unperformed. That made me gentler, less reactive, less quick to dismiss. I don't know if you'll ever understand the role you played in this. You didn't choose it, you didn't intend it. And that's what makes it pure. You didn't try to change me. You didn't reach out. You didn't enter my life dramatically. You simply existed. And in existing, honestly, you reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten. That the most meaningful shifts often happen quietly, without witnesses, without announcements, without applause. They happen inside. I don't feel impatient about what comes next. I don't feel anxious. I feel present. And presence has become more valuable to me than certainty. If the story continues, it will continue from that place. Not urgency, not fantasy, but grounded awareness. And if it doesn't, that's okay too, because the change already happened. I'm more awake now, more discerning, more attuned to what feels real. All because of a moment that didn't ask for attention, but received it anyway. Stay with me. There's still one more layer to this story. As time passed, I realized the change wasn't dramatic enough for anyone else to notice. It didn't announce itself in my behavior, or alter my routine in obvious ways. I still woke up the same, went about my days the same, spoke to people the same, but internally, something had reorganized itself. Like furniture quietly moved in a familiar room. Everything's still recognizable, yet nothing quite where it used to be. I became more aware what didn't reach me anymore. Things that once distracted me lost their pull. Conversations. They revolved around surface-level urgency felt thinner. I didn't feel above them, just separate from them. I could participate without being absorbed. I could listen without needing to engage deeply. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about that distance. It wasn't detachment. It was discernment. I noticed how often people mistake availability for intimacy. How easily attention is confused with connection. I'd done that too once. I'd allowed myself to believe that being seen frequently meant being known. But after that moment, I understood the difference. Being known feels quieter. I started protecting my inner stillness without trying to defend it. I didn't explain myself when I declined, or de-invitations that didn't feel right. I didn't overextend to maintain appearances. I trusted my internal cues in a way I hadn't before. And nothing fell apart because of it. If anything, things became simpler. I found myself thinking less about outcomes and more about alignment. Not asking where things were going, but how they felt while they were happening. That shift alone changed the quality of my days. I was no longer chasing clarity. I was letting clarity arrive. And it did, slowly. I began to understand that what stayed with me wasn't your image, but the way my body responded to it. The absence of tension, the absence of urgency, the absence of that familiar need to impress or pursue or prove. It was the first time in a long while that something had entered my awareness without triggering my defenses. That mattered because my defenses had been working overtime for years, protecting me from disappointment, from hope, from expectations I didn't want to carry anymore. They had served their purpose, but they were also exhausting. That moment allowed them to rest. I also noticed how my sense of time changed. I wasn't rushing ahead mentally as much. I wasn't replaying the past either. I stayed closer to the present, not because I was trying to be mindful, but because the present felt sufficient. That's not something I experience often. Usually my mind is somewhere else, planning, reflecting, preparing. Now I'd stay where my body was, and with that came a subtle ease. Not happiness exactly, but steadiness. I didn't feel compelled to talk about the shift. It didn't need validation. Some experiences lose their clarity when shared too soon. I wanted to live inside at first to see what it would reveal if left untouched. And what it revealed was this. I had been living slightly ahead of myself for a long time, anticipating instead of inhabiting, managing instead of feeling. That moment brought me back into sync. I became more attentive to small things, like through a window, silence between sounds, the weight of a pause in conversation, noticing without labeling, experiencing without needing to capture. I hadn't realized how rare that had become. I also noticed how my expectations softened, not lowered, softened. I wasn't demanding meaning from every interaction. I wasn't disappointed when things stayed light. I allowed experiences to be what they were. You were without forcing depth. Ironically, that's when depth appeared more naturally. I didn't think about you constantly. I thought about myself more clearly, and that clarity made everything else feel less cluttered. I realized how often I'd been operating from habit rather than intention. How many choices I'd made simply because they were familiar. The shift didn't make me impulsive. It made me deliberate. I waited more. Not in a passive way, but in an observant one. I watched how things unfolded instead of steering them immediately. I trusted timing instead of pushing it, and nothing slipped away because of that patience. If anything, what wasn't meant for me drifted out quietly without resistance. And what remained felt more aligned. That taught me something important. What's real doesn't need to be chased. It also taught me that recognition can come before knowledge. That sometimes you feel something before you understand it. And that doesn't make it unreliable. It makes it honest. I didn't need answers to honor that honesty. I allowed it to shape how I moved, how I spoke, how I chose where to invest my energy. I became less reactive, more responsive, less concerned with momentum, more attentive to direction. This wasn't a transformation anyone could point to. It didn't show up in milestones or declarations. It showed up in subtle recalibrations, in choosing rest over distraction, in choosing presence over performance. And it stayed. I don't know if you'll ever know the impact of that single moment. I don't know if it was meant to ripple outward or remain contained.